Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate 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 Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya. Narayanam namaskritya. Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Nasta prayasta badrishu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati Kamashloke Bhakti Bhagavati Naistaki. Before reciting Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendances on classes of Bhagavatam, by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyan Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Vena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Vibhagamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sakana Raghunathitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakvantitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Vanjakalpa Juricha Kripasnu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vedikadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Kroti Vachalam Pangam Mungayate Girim Yakripitam Mahamade Shri Gurum Nilatarinam Tata Kalo Sampraverte Samohaya Suradvisham Buddhanam Nanjana Shuta Kikarteshu Bhavishyati Tata Kalo Sampraverte Samohaya Suradvisham Buddho Nam Nanjana Sutaha Ki Karteshu Bhavishyati Tatakalo Sampraverte Samohaya Suradvisham Buddho Nam Nanjana Sutaha Ki Kateshu Bhavishyati Tatakalo Sampravite Samohaya Suradvisham Buddho Nam Nanjana Sutaha Kateshu Bhavishyati Tatakalo Sampravite Samohaya Suradvisham Buddho Nam Jnana Sutaha Kateshu Bhavishyati Tatakalo Sampravite
Samohaya Suradvisham Buddho Nam Nanjana Sutaha Kikateshu pavishyati.
Kikateshu bhavishyati.
Let's go, boy. You don't have it memorized? You said it so many times.
Tata kalu sampravarte.
Tata kalu sampravarte.
Samohaya suyat visam.
Sumohaya suyat visam.
Buddho namnam jana sutaha.
Guru Nam Janasritaha.
Kikateshu bhavishyati.
Kikateshu bhavishyati. Synonyms: Tata, thereafter, Kalo, in the age of Kali, Sampravritte, having ensued, Samohaya, for the purpose of deluding, Sura, the theists, Visham, those who are envious, Buddha, Lord Buddha, Namna, the name, Anjana Sutaha, whose mother was Anjana, keep Teshu, the province of Gaya, Bihar. Bhavishati will take place. Translation. Then, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful deists. Then, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theists. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We're going to start from the fourth paragraph. Maharaj Parikshit said that only the animal killer cannot relish the transcendental message of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, if people are to be educated to the path of Godhead, they must be taught, first and foremost, to stop the process of animal killing, as above mentioned. It is nonsensical to say that the animal killing has nothing to do with spiritual realization. By this dangerous theory, many so-called sannyasis have sprung up by the grace of Kali Yuga, who preach animal killing under the garb of the Vedas. The subject matter has already been discussed in the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Maulana Chankazi Sahib. The animal sacrifices stated in the Vedas is different from unrestricted animal killing in the slaughterhouse. Because the Asuras, or so-called scholars of the Vedic literatures, put forth evidence of animal killing in Vedas, Lord Buddha superficially denied the authority of the Vedas. This rejection of Vedas by Lord Buddha was adopted in order to save the people from the vice of animal killing, as well to save the poor animals from the slaughtering process of their big brothers who clamor for universal brotherhood, peace, justice, and equity. There is no justice when there is animal killing. Lord Buddha wanted to stop it completely, and therefore his cult of ahimsa was propagated not only in India, but also outside of this country. So I think I'm just going to take this paragraph by paragraph. So in here it says, Maharaj Parikshit says, only the animal killer cannot relish the transcendental message of the Supreme Lord. And so this gives us a clue of how we can understand the message and how we can help others understand it, because that's our whole mission. So only people that are practicing non-violence can actually understand, the message of Godhead. And this is supported, many statements by Srila Prabhupada and all our acharyas. And like he's saying, it's nonsensical to say that animal killing has nothing to do with spiritual realization. And so when we analyze this, it's basically looking at the 4 pillars of sinful life versus the 4 pillars of dharma. And so one thing we can understand is that there's the pillar of compassion versus, violence. So there's like 2 opposite ends of a spectrum. And so the more you go towards compassion, the more you're able to actually understand these things. If someone's trying to understand that we're our souls, not the body, then there's, psychologically, there's this thing called cognitive dissonance,
or if you're presented with something that's like obviously true, but you're holding on to some sort of idea that's against that, you just like, it'll just go over your head. You won't be able to understand it. And, you know, Prabhupada would often confront the Christians, and I'll quote the purport, they want to save, the people from the vice of animal killing, as well as to save the poor animals from the slaughtering process of their big brothers who clamor for universal brotherhood, peace, justice, and equity. That's like, in some ways, that's a shot against a lot of the Christians, and that was his big hit against any Christian he would talk to. Lord Jesus Christ says no killing, but you're maintaining slaughterhouses. You don't need to do this. And actually, even I saw a tweet from the Pope, the current Pope, saying that slaughterhouses were not so good. So it's just this ridiculous hypocrisy that's in this day's age, where even leaders of religion, they can say that, but he probably still eats meat. Who knows if he's actually vegetarian or not. Can't even walk his talk. And looking from Shastra, we can look at the whole first chapter before Krishna starts really revealing the Atma Tattva. Like in the second chapter, he's talking about the soul and the different characteristics about it. We see Arjuna, he's overwhelmed with grief, and in the last verse of the first chapter, Sanjay said, Arjuna, having thus spoken, and he's revealing all his doubts to Krishna on why he doesn't want to fight. Arjuna cast aside his bow and arrow and sat down on the chariot. His mind was overwhelmed with grief. Purport. By observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again. Such a kind and soft-hearted person in devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive knowledge. So, Prabhupada's saying here, a kind and soft-hearted person is fit to receive self-knowledge, or like, Atma Tattva, or whatever. Krishna's about to tell him about the soul. These guys are their souls; they're not their bodies. Therefore, and it's kind of like a funny argument that I always think like, so what, you're telling them like, oh, because they're not their bodies, therefore you can just kill them. But in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, they're on the battlefield. They're supposed to be engaging in war, and that's their dharma. So it's actually, I was reading, some people they hear Prabhupada preaching about a war when there was this whole conflict of the Vietnam War, and they kind of get confused because they want to be in the position of Arjuna as like hearing from Krishna, but then Prabhupada tells them that Arjuna should fight. They're all like, it's kind of like this weird thing because they're all, when they're not hearing that, they're trying to protest, and their whole generation is protesting peace, against the Vietnam War and against sleeping in Bhagavatam class. That's what they're protesting against. And so when there's this kind of difference, and Prabhupada he's not trying to hold back. He's trying to explain them the philosophical position. Although due to their different prejudices, they couldn't really get it. But it's like, and then Prabhupada, then he learned slowly how to properly present it to these people, and that way it won't like change them. Say no, he was a fighter, therefore he can fight and engage that in Krishna's service. If you're a writer, if you're a painter, if you're a musician, then he's talking to the hippies in the room. You engage that in the service. Not that Krishna consciousness means you should fight the war. There's a war that Arjuna was fighting was for a specific purpose that Krishna wanted. The war that Nixon is fighting was just based on cheating, lies, and the desire for profit and all these other things. And so that's much different war. In general, the devotees don't want war, but war is a necessary tool that needs to be used sometimes. Violence is the tool that needs to be used sometimes, but it's not, violence in itself is bad. We want, non-violence, and which comes from compassion, is ultimately good. Prabhupada says, it makes someone fit to receive knowledge. And Prabhupada, his commentary was dedicated to Baladev Vijayabhushan. Baladev Vijayabhushan says in the same verse, from the first chapter, it's understood that inquiry about Atma takes place in a person who is compassionate in nature and non-violent, and not in one who is cruel and violent. So that's why Prabhupada says in this purport of the verse we're reading, if people are to be educated in the path of Godhead, they must be taught first and foremost to stop the process of animal killing. So it's basically, if you're a Christian that's just killing a bunch of people, and then a devotee comes up to you and tells you, wait, you're a soul, those animals are also souls, stop doing that, then the Christian is not going to get it, because he's just engaged in so much killing. He would have to reject his whole life and his whole idea of himself being pious, which is essentially what that is. Their false ego is just too big. But we have to somehow convince them to stop, convince them that even Jesus, look at you say you're a follower of Jesus, you're puffed up in that way, well then why are you following this? Anyways, preaching to anyone in Kali Yuga is very difficult, so we definitely need the mercy, but that's one idea from this paragraph. Lord Buddha came because there was people preaching from the Vedas that you should be killing all these animals, and so to bring back the compassion and bring back the actual ability for people to be able to relish the transcendental message of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu came mercifully as Lord Buddha and deluded the atheists. In a lecture of the Bhagavatam in 1974 in Chicago, in the 8th chapter, Prabhupada was saying, Duskritana, Muda, they cannot understand. Why can't they understand? That because they're Duskritana, always engaged in sinful activities. Who can see Krishna? Who can see Krishna, Chanchal? One who has his eyes open in Bhagavatam class. Who is not sinful. And then he quotes from 728. Yesham tvananta gatam papam. One who has finished his papam, finished his life of sinful activity, he can understand Krishna. Therefore, is our request to everyone, please don't commit the 4 kinds of sinful activity: illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. This is a preliminary qualification to understand God. So Prabhupada's, in this purport you're hearing about, you can't understand if you're a slaughterhouse society, and then he's including these 3 other things. These are preliminary things. If you don't have these, you can't understand. This is the preliminary equation. Especially one must not kill animals. Then he's pressing at this point. The Bible also, therefore, is said, thou shalt not kill. You rascal, if you want to understand what is God, you must stop this killing art. Thou shalt not kill. But these rascals will not understand. This is their misfortune. They're manda, sumanda, bhagyo. Yeah, they're just manda bhagya. Manda means bad, right? Bhagya means fortune. So it's crazy, bad, terrible fortune. They're just misfortunate. And therefore God is always covered to them. And we can read that verse that he quoted. Yesham tvanta gatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bandhante mam drudavrata. So we want to become drudavrata. We want to have a vrata, a drudavrata, firm, strong determination, fixed up, nishta, devotional life. So what do we need for that? And again, we need to have a life where sinful actions are completely eradicated, and that will free us from the duality of delusion. Everyone's just being dragged along by their mind, accept, reject, desire, hate. That's all they want. It's because they're so engaged in these sinful lives that they don't have any choice. Prabhupada says in the purport of this verse, this is Bhagavad Gita 7:28, by the way, and the translation is, person who has acted previously piously in their previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, they're freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in Krishna's service with determination. So those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only of those who have passed their lives in practicing the regular principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service. So there we have it again. If they're engaged in meat eating and illicit sex and all these things, they won't be able to accept devotional service no matter what we tell them. They just can't. They can't understand. So that's the first thing. They need to stop doing those things. Then they can gradually they can rise to the pure knowledge of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is a process of being situated in a spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. From the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. So therefore we're trying to give people the association of the pure devotee Prabhupada, and in that way they can be purified from these sinful activities and make progressive path and a march back to Godhead. And so it's there's this funny story of Gopal Bhatt in the pot, which nicely illustrates having the 4 pillars of sinful life as your life, or having the 4 pillars of dharma as your life. So, the story's not exactly about that, but the story goes that there was a king, and he had his court jester, Gopal Bhatt, who would be the only one that could play jokes on him, because the king is such a stressful position. You have to say, this guy has to die, this you have to go to war here, we have to do this diplomacy, this intrigue politically, and it's so much pressure and so much stuff, so they need something to let off the steam. So there's always some intelligent guy that's an advisor as a jester, as a joker, that just jokes around with the king. And the king can joke around with him too, and that way he has one person, because if he was just going to joke around with his general, just going to joke around with someone else, they would lose their prestige and they wouldn't be able to actually serve the king in the way they need to. So to maintain the proper position, there's, in a proper culture, the king will have a court, jester. So there's all these funny stories in Bengal of this Gopal Bhatt, and even though they're not directly devotional, Prabhupada would often tell them, and they're really hilarious. So there's this one, Ramroy Prabhu tells it often. So Gopal Bhatt, it goes to the king, and the king, they see this yogi that's that's said to have the power to stay in the cold water for all night, and the king's no way, I want to see it. I bet you that you can't do it. And he makes a bet with the yogi, and the yogi, he knows that he can do it, so he goes and he just submerges himself in the icy cold river for the whole night, and then comes out, and then the king is scrutinizing, thinking, how the heck did he do it? He must have cheated. And he's like, you cheated. See, there was that giwik in the temple, on the horizon, and you were using the heat from that giwik to stay warm, weren't you? You cheating, I'm not going to pay you my debt, my bet. And Gopal Bhatt was like, come on, king, that's totally not fair. And he's trying to convince him, the king, I'm not going to pay him. And so Gopal Bhatt just he was kind of frustrated by that. So he's like, I got to teach the king something. I got to teach him a lesson. And so he one day, all the everyone was gone for something, and the chef was gone, and so they had to find a cook, and Gopal Bhatt was the only one available. So they engaged Gopal Bhatt in cooking the king's lunch, and the time for lunch goes by, and the king is checks, Gopal Bhatt, where's lunch? So I'm preparing it already. The pie is on the fire. It's just now coming. It'll be ready. And then he's like, all right. And then the king comes back after another half an hour, and then Gopal, where's my lunch? Just now coming, my lord. It's just, we have to make the offering, and everything is almost ready. I'm putting it on the plate. 30 minutes more, and Gopal, and he's getting really mad. He goes in there, and he's like, what is this, Gopal? And he sees a 10-foot high pot on this tiny little stove, and the pot's so far away. He's like, what? It's gonna take so long. You're never gonna cook anything with that on there. And Gopal's like, yes, exactly. Just like you said that guy got heat from the giwik that was so far away, I say that this will also cook from so far away, because I'm just following your ideas, king. And then the king understood, and he felt a little ashamed, and he went to found the yogi and paid him. And basically, to tie it in, if we're one engaged in, the flame can be said to be our Sankirtan yogya. That's the yogya for this age, the fire sacrifice. So that's the heat that we're trying to purify ourselves and attain Krishna consciousness. And so if we're on the, sinful life is like having pillars that are 10 feet high, and our pot will never touch it and it'll never work. So if people are engaged in that, and they try to engage in Sankirtan Yoga, they're really not going to get that much benefit. First, they need to engage in the 4 principles of dharmic life, which is like having a proper stove, a proper pot. Then the flame will actually be able to work. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah.
Right, and that's based on what Prabhupada's saying in this purport. So the next purport paragraph. Technically, Lord Buddha's philosophy is called atheistic because there's no acceptance of Supreme Lord, and because that system of philosophy denied the authority of the Vedas. But that is an act of camouflage by the Lord. Lord Buddha is the incarnation of God. As such, he is the original propounder of Vedic knowledge. He therefore cannot reject Vedic philosophy, but outwardly he rejected it because the Sura-Dvish, or the demons who are always envious of devotees, try to support cow killing or animal killing from the pages of the Vedas. And this is now being done by modernized sannyasis. Lord Buddha had to reject the authority of the Vedas altogether. So when he's saying modernized sannyasis, do you guys know who he's talking about?
Ramakrishna sannyasis.
Are they actually saying you should do cow killing and animal killing supported by the Vedas, or are they just
They have this institute called Bhakti, and they used to call it the Murgi mission.
Right. But is that because they're just like lax on their dietary habits and they're just lazy, or do they actually have some actual like scripture and arguments for that? You guys have. I mean, you guys. If anyone would know you.
They just say it's common sense. Vivekananda said it's better that, you know.
So it's just a sentimental argument.
You eat meat, keep your body fit.
Yeah.
If you eat meat, your body will be
Just like if you play soccer, then you understand the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. The point is that if you can't keep your body fit, you can't protect your nation. If you can't protect your nation, you can't protect your culture. You can't protect yourself. So.
It's a sentimental argument.
Is very important. Then we can think about Bhagavad Gita. So for now, you eat meat, you build your body to exercise.
That's nice. That's exactly the opposite of what Bhaktisiddhanta said to Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Screw the nation. Screw everything. Everything. This is all that matters. It's more important than anything. It's more urgent than anything to teach people this, like a burning building. And so this Lord Buddha rejecting the Vedas is simply technical, and it had to be so. And had it not been so, he would have not been accepted as the incarnation of Godhead, nor would he be worshipped in transcendental songs of the poet Jayadev, who was a Vaishnavacharya. Lord Buddha preached the preliminary principles of the Vedas in a manner suitable for the time. And so also did Sankaracharya to establish the authority of the Vedas. Therefore, both Lord Buddha and Acharya Shankar paved the path of theism, and Vaishnavacharyas, specifically Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, led the people on the path towards realization of going back to Godhead. So, this paving of the path of theism is very interesting. It shows like the Vaishnava viewpoint can bring all these like people like Christians and like different like atheists. So how do you deal with all the different religions and all the different things? And it's like most people, it's like kind of a question like, oh well, ours is just the best. The Christians just say that theirs is wrong, ours is the best. The Muslims are wrong, and Jews they didn't quite get it, but we got it. Or whatever, and there's so much of this stuff. But the Vaishnavas, we have this whole of all through history coming from the Bhagavatam, coming from our acharyas. We can like see it through like a very clear conception of how God is like properly maintaining everything. And so we have the Vedas degrading, the modernized sannyasis today in the form of the Murgi mission, eating chicken, and previously thousands of years ago, commending so much animal slaughter that God himself decided he had to come down to stop it. And so doing that, he has to direct them away from the Vedas for a second to get them to understand these preliminary principles. Then once those are established, then Shankaracharya can come in and point it back to the Vedas, to the revelation. That's what one thing the modern day Buddhists, which is a point I want to talk about a little bit after reading the purport, the last paragraph, one more paragraph. The modern day Buddhists, they have, their leader eats meat.
Yeah.
So it seems like if this whole thing was established to not maintain slaughterhouses, it seems so weird that now there's like the leader of them. But I'll get to that. And okay, so paving the path. So Lord Buddha did that, and then Shankaracharya brought it back to the Vedas. Then his incorrect conceptions, because in the Padma Purana it said the Shankaracharya's philosophy, this Mayavad philosophy, is just veiled Buddhism. It's exactly Buddhism. And I was just reading how exactly like Shunyavad of the Buddhisms, everything is Shunya, everything is void. That's their basic thing. All the characteristics, how the Buddhists describe it in their teachings, practically the same words are used by Shankaracharya. And if you go to Gaya, here we see Buddha was born in Gaya. There's actually a Shankaracharya priest that is doing puja and worship, Vedic puja of the Buddhist, like where the guy attained Bodhisattva, where the Buddhist. This is a different Buddha. There's actually two Buddhas. I'll get to that after reading this purport. So, okay, we are glad that people are taking interest in the nonviolent movement of Lord Buddha. But will they take the matter very seriously and close the animal slaughterhouses altogether? If not, there's no meaning to their ahimsa cult. So that's like, you have an idea, but then there's the execution and the application of that idea. So if people just have an idea and they don't execute it, they're just sentimentalists. They're just useless. Like there's this famous, we can read in chapter 4, verse 10 in the Gita, in the purport, and Prabhupada's quoting actually from a Christian theologist. They're saying like, religion without philosophy is sentimentalism and sometimes fanaticism, and philosophy without religion is just dry speculation. So it's, being a sentimental, non-violent person, but not like endeavoring to stop the violence elsewhere, is just like an ostrich putting its head in the sand. It's just is a useless person. There's no it's like a devotee that says Krishna is God, but then refuses to tell anyone about that, or refuses to preach. To like, what's the use of your practicing, and you just say you're a follower of Lord Chaitanya, but you don't do any Sankirtan. It doesn't make any sense. Then the meaning of your whole relationship with Lord Chaitanya is useless. So Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam was composed just prior to the beginning of the age of Kali, about 5,000 years ago, and Lord Buddha appeared about 2,600 years ago. Therefore, in Bhagavatam, Buddha is foretold. Such is the authority of this clear scripture. There are many such prophecies, and they are being fulfilled one after another. This will indicate the positive standing of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is without any trace of mistake, illusion, cheating, and imperfection, which are the 4 flaws of any conditioned soul. The liberated souls are above these flaws, and therefore they can see and foretell things which are to take place on distant future dates. So this point of the Bhagavatam is perfect without any trace of mistake. It's true. So we have to be careful about devotees, even that they'll try to give their own interpretation on the Bhagavatam. And so this is very dangerous. It's Bhagavatam was written by Vyasadeva, who is an incarnation, directly of Krishna, as we just heard in a previous verse. And the way he wrote the Bhagavatam was in samadhi. He was focused so much, he was able to perceive Krishna in Maya and all the interactions, and able to describe it and reveal that to us. So he's basing his writing on his direct, perfect experience. He's beyond these 4 defects. Where if someone, there's only a few stories which are admitted as allegories, and they're clearly stated, like the story of King Puranjana and different things. So some people want to try to interpret the Bhagavatam and shift the Bhagavatam according to the modern day thought, according to some maybe scientific teaching, some philosophy, some different thing. But this is very dangerous, and it just shows that whoever's doing that, their lack of faith and realization of the Bhagavatam. So we should be very careful that whatever philosophy someone's presenting, it has to be based directly in the Bhagavatam. It can't be some twist or interpretation. Because when you get into word jugglery and interpretation, then these mistakes, illusion, cheating, and imperfection can all enter into it. And Prabhupada says, where does he say it? This cult of Lord Buddha is like still around today, and this specifically, this Buddha, the Avatar Buddha, whose mission was to get people to stop being violent to animals, we can actually see it in the vegan and vegetarian movement. Maybe it's not directly related by history, but philosophically, that's basically what he was trying to do: just get people to be vegetarian and vegan. And so, if they're actually going and fighting against the slaughterhouse, there's many people that are fighting against the slaughterhouse. Devotees, as devotees, that should be one of the fronts on the war against Maya. But unfortunately, there's very few soldiers, and the primary fronts are all being neglected. One of the fronts is getting the slaughterhouses shut down, and so the people that are doing it, they're actually following this avatar of Buddha, and so hopefully they get some more credit, and because of their preliminary activities to gain Vedic knowledge are being performed, maybe they can get a book from one of us or some devotee and get actual from their manda bhagya to actually being a bhagyavan jiva. Okay, so there's 2 Buddhas at least, and many scholars and devotees have shown this. Sridhar Maharaj, who Prabhupada is, like when Prabhupada was preparing his leaving pastimes, he was saying, different philosophical questions, you can go to him and ask him. And he was known as Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Maharaj by Bhakti Siddhanta, because he's like firmly understood. So he's saying there's one, the Bhagavatam's Buddha was what we said in this verse, Anjana Sutta. Anjana Sutta, and he was born in Kikateshu, Bhavishyati. Bhavishyati means born, or no, will take place. He was born in the province of Gaya, which is Kitakish, and that's coming from Sridhar Swami's comment on this verse. So Anjana, the son of Anjana, born in Gaya, that's this Buddha. And actually, when we look at the modern day histories of the Buddha, that is like the person of like the Buddhist Gautam Buddha, known by different names. He was born from a mother named Maya Devi and father of Shuddhodana in a place in Nepal. And the dates of their birth were very, very different. One was born about 500 years before Christ, and one was born about 1800 years. And so one of Prabhupada's disciples, who's a scholar, Natabara Prabhu, he's a temple president, or he's like a co-temple president in Detroit. He wrote about this. The first Buddha avatar established a form of Buddhism by revolting against those rituals that accepted animal sacrifice and emphasized the godly principles of ahimsa, non-violence based on recognizing the divine in all beings and the divinity of all souls, arousing compassion for all. The second Buddha styled what became Buddhism, that was known for its monist or impersonalistic philosophy, that God, the absolute truth, is inert, non-active, and without any characteristics, and that by reaching the same inert and non-active state of nirvana is the goal for attaining freedom from all suffering. So there's different Buddhist texts that they actually mention different Buddhas, and they mentioned three categories of Buddhas. There can be human Buddhas, which Gautama Buddha, the founder of the current practice, which the Dalai Lama is eating meat, he's supposed to be the leader of them. That's founded by a human. And it's actually interesting that this human, he was born in Nepal, but he attained enlightenment at the birthplace of the avatar Buddha. And and it's said in the different Buddhist comment that he specifically went there. He knew that place had spiritual potency and potency for enlightenment. And then there's Bodhisattva Buddhas who were born completely enlightened. And then there's the Adi Buddha, and then this is the omnipresent Vishnu avatar incarnation of Lord Buddha. And then there's also, there's a verse in the famous Amara Kosh dictionary which is describing Lord Buddha, and the different commentaries on it. There's 18 different names of Vishnu that are used to describe Buddha, and then there's 7 names of the second, and they're separate. The 18 are said together, and then the 7. So the different commentaries are saying these first 18 are referring to the avatar Buddha, and these second are referring to the second Buddha. So there's this avatar Buddha that Prabhupada is saying that we worship, and he only superficially rejected the Vedas, even though he's the compiler of the Vedas. Vedanta Vid, Vedakrit, Eva Chaham. Krishna has compiled all of that, and so he's not going to reject it, but just to be able to establish people on the right path, he did that. So we worship that. Jayadev Goswami, in his most esoteric Gita Govind, has verses that we sang the other day for Varaha's appearance day. We worship Lord Buddha. It says, as Buddha you bestowed compassion. So that's what Jayadev, how he glorifies him. And so we should, and then there's this nihilistic, atheistic Buddhist, and it kind of makes sense that the leader of a nihilistic philosophy would not really care if he's not really following it. He's not, ahimsa is just a secondary thing. It's because my doctor said I need to do that, therefore I take meat or something. That's his excuse for taking meat. But it's and if meat comes from a slaughterhouse, so what? I mean, ultimately, if I fully actually realize my philosophy, it wouldn't matter anyways. It's all just illusion. It's all nothing. It's all meaningless. That's ultimately what Buddhist philosophy is, and it's summed up nicely that in Prabhupada's following Prabhupada, one of his disciples, I was reading all these Buddhist texts and getting so confused. You cannot say it is, but you also cannot say it is not. Neither you can say it is both is and is not. You can neither say it is nor it is not. And he's like, how do you say the truth? What's the actual truth? It's so confusing. And then Prabhupada just knew the truth. He was just speaking from the Vedas and the scriptures, and that's how he knew the truth. And so the Vedas are direct knowledge, and we can realize them by following them, which means We have to get compassion primarily, and the other 3 pillars of Dharma, which are
no intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex.
yeah, but so it's like those relate. Yeah. Mercy, cleanliness, and austerity. So with those things, engage in Krishna service, we can have the full realization and fully understand all the purport of the Vedas, which is to realize Krishna. But without following those preliminary things, then we cannot gain self-realization, because we're just not going to have the impetus. We're not going to want to ask how we are in our bodies. We're not going to be able to understand even if someone tells us. Krishna revealed the things to Arjuna because he was overwhelmed by compassion. And so this actually one thing is that these 2 Buddhas were interpolated together by word jugglery from Shankaracharya, because it was his mission to there's in the Padma Purana stated, "O Shiva, make people in general adverse to me by concocting your own version of scripture and thus hiding my glories. In this way, the world's population bereft of spiritual knowledge will increase." So, one thing is that people have certain karma that they need to be born, but you're not going to be born when it's Satya Yuga or when nice culture is there. You have to have some outlet for these very low people to be born, to be able to replay out their karma. And so part of creation, the whole cycle, is that we have this Kali Yuga where the Varna Shankara is increased to be the predominating percentage of the population. And so that helps these people come here. And so that's one reason why he wants this. And also, Shiva needed to come as Shankara to realign, as Prabhupada said, pave the path to real theism. And then we look at Shankaracharya's doctrine of Mayavad and Brahma, and we look at Buddhism, Shunyavad, they're basically the same. And Prabhupada is the fighter of both of them. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha. He delivers the West from Nirvishesha and Shunyavad. And so therefore we're trying to follow Prabhupada, so we should understand all these things and deliver them. That's all I have to say. Is there any comments or questions? Gopal.
Class, Natabara Gauranga Prabhu. I was on this point you were making, the first paragraph about, you were making it throughout the class, with how the animal killers, or butchers, cannot understand spiritual knowledge. And there's one famous verse in this connection in the 10th canto, first chapter, 4th verse. Says Nivittita sarupagi yamana bhavo sachattottamano abhiramat kauttamaslo kagunanavadhat pumam viradheta vina paspasna. Says glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul, undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord, except the butcher or one who is killing his own self? Prabhupada goes into the purport, talking about why they can't understand.
Yeah, we read yesterday in the Nityananda Bhajan, like, whoever hasn't got the mercy might as well have just committed suicide. Who doesn't take advantage of the mercy of Nityananda.
Another point, which is not to go against the point you made, but as far as usually when we meet, when we're out there, at least the mass distribution of the holy name we're doing, we usually don't go up to somebody and say, hey, we don't say, hey, follow these 4 regular principles and then chant Hare Krishna. Usually we try to get them to chant Hare Krishna at least.
In this regard, we follow Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't either. He just engaged them in kirtan, and slowly, by getting purified from that, then he revealed these other principles. But if these other principles aren't properly fixed in someone's life, they're not going to make any advancement. Of course, how we first we know we see a person and we diagnose the patient. Okay, they're eating meat. Okay, so we need to somehow stop that. Now, what's the best way to stop that? It's actually just engage them in the association of devotees in kirtan and Shravan and kirtan. But, that's not going to be the first thing. But eventually you're going to have to say, buddy, stop doing that. That's going to be one of the many things that you're going to have to somehow convince the person. Maybe miraculously, just by the chanting and association of devotees, they'll feel inspired not to anyways. That was also Prabhupada's method. Give them delicious prasadam. Prasadam tastes better than any meat you can get. And so if you just load them up with prasadam and tell them, hey, you should only eat prasadam, then naturally they'll become meat eaters, or they'll become, vegetarian. And Prabhupada also criticized, it's not enough just to walk on the path of theism. You want to be at the goal of theism, Krishna consciousness. Paving the path is necessary for people to make their way. But if someone's stuck on one of the paths of vegetarianism, they're no better than a pigeon. All the pigeons are vegetarian.
Monkeys.
Yeah, monkeys are mostly vegetarian unless they're like eating a bug or something like that.
Even pigeons eat snake.
The pigeons are ruthless.
They eat chicken too. The pigeons are just like the sannyasis.
Exactly, I was going to say. I saw them picking up some chicken, and I was like the cousin.
Oh my god, that's horrible, dude.
So yeah, Atma Hina, the killer of the soul, descends into the darkest region of ignorance. So we want to avoid the darkest region of ignorance, and we want to help other people avoid that. And the Bhagavatam can see and foretell things which are to take place on distant future dates. So remember, the Bhagavatam is telling us how Kali Yuga is going to progress well beyond even the 10,000 years devotees are coming here. And the Bhagavatam told us all these different things in the past that happened. The knowledge that's coming from the Bhagavatam is perfect, and especially perfect when it's given down by realized acharyas to us. Because also the Bhagavatam is a little out of reach for us. So thank God Prabhupada is there to give us, he's fully realizing it at every step. And he's just pulling some out and giving to us. And that's how he could write non-stop, practically speaking. Every single day for hours and hours a day, he was composing all these thousands and thousands of purports, writing 80 books or however you want to count it. And so taking advantage of that, we can go beyond the flaws of conditioned souls. And anyone who disagrees with Prabhupada, it's usually not a good idea, and especially if they're devotee, then, it's always a good idea to side with Prabhupada. You're never going to be in a winning argument. Maybe they might be able to bewilder you with their word jugglery for a minute, but you have to always side with Prabhupada. Don't get tricked to disagree with Prabhupada, because he's beyond these four flaws. So if you can admit that the other person is beyond the four flaws, then maybe you don't have to disagree, but you have to harmonize. You can't disregard Prabhupada. What do you have to say? That the
part of the purport speaks about this animal killer cannot relish transcendental message.
Yeah.
And it also it makes you really horrible on the inside too, And it's a well-known fact that many people who come to work in the slaughterhouses, they can't work for more than 2 weeks in a row.
It's just so grinding against your consciousness.
Apparently it's just like this...
the biggest turnover or something, yeah.
Documentary called Cowspiracy. And in that, Chandrasekhar Maharaj was, speaking about how, these guys, they're constantly dead and they have to, chop the head off a chicken, the whole day.
Hundreds of times a day.
Job, imagine holding something and oozing the blood like that, over and over and over again. They can't just stay. And these people who usually own these slaughterhouses and all, they really have they get horrible reactions for it, even in this life, or to speak of the next. For example, there's this one boy, he's been trying to come here from Florida so many times, He even booked his ticket to come to my Guru Maharaj Shravan Kirtan camp. He even booked his ticket to come here. But every time something would happen, something would happen. First time, his parents had tried to get him deprogrammed or something like that. Second time, his health just got ruined.
Is he a slaughterhouse baby or something, or what?
No, I don't know his I don't know what that means. But his parents own a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, so he's a slaughterhouse baby.
It's a slaughterhouse baby. It's these people, they just have
such bad karma.
Yeah.
You know? And even in Arctic.
Just see the purport in real life.
Yeah, you know. And like, you know, there's also been like many studies that those who become serial killers, especially like some of the most like famous serial killers, they were like, their main occupation was like, you know, killing cows. And they'd be killing cows, like they don't really see much of a difference, you know, and then they just take to degrading further and further down.
Yeah, so this inconsistency and this terrible thing has to be rooted out. And all these, it's nice, on one hand, it's nice to see that there's people like these Christians that even though they're fanatic and stupid, at least they're going out. Like that's a good thing that they're doing, but they're most likely drinking and eating meat and doing all these nonsense things, and they don't understand their philosophy, and they're saying universal brotherhood, you know, peace and justice, and everyone's going to be like, you know, equal under Christ and things like that. But it's like, how are you actually an example of that? You can't give anything to anyone.
Yeah.
A devotee says we need to root all this stuff out. You know, all this Kali Yuga bogus stuff. Prabhupada's brought the cure. So it's like, you know, once the milk pours in, all the ink or poison will come out of the mixture. So
I have a question.
somehow we need to fight this. I mean, the way we're fighting is by distributing books, and hopefully people read the books, and hopefully there's someone that's not an animal killer enough that they can start to understand. Actually, I was barely just not eating meat when I started to read, and it didn't make any sense. Nothing made any sense for like a long time. And even just to understand like that the soul was like eternal. I remember there's like a day, like Deva Mata was like reading from the second chapter, and it's like, I had already read basically the whole Bhagavad Gita, and I was thinking, yeah, I'm so smart, and I was puffed, and I didn't even understand that point. Like, cause I just read the words, but nothing stuck. Absolutely nothing. And he's just yelling at me like, what are you actually reading? Like, you know, you don't understand, how do you not understand this? It's the most basic idea in the whole thing. So what to speak of the higher ideas, but.
Yeah. So like, you know, what we speak about in school, usually like what they talk about Buddha is that he had like an eightfold path, and he saw like a dying man. You know,
Yeah, I remember that. I also was taught like that.
And something else, you know. So like, which is that bona fide? Is it like which Buddha are they talking about? You know.
That's most likely the Gautama Buddha who went to the Bodhisattva in Gaya.
He was like a great prince, and then like, you know, he realized that, you know, there's no point to life. You know.
Of course, anything that these people are saying, how much interpolation between the two, who's to say? Because Shankaracharya is like the original one who interpolated them. So maybe there is aspects from both, but we can actually look at older documents in Buddhism that some devotee scholars have, and there's references I can send you that you can like see some different scriptural references from the Buddhist scriptures, what they say, and different things, and then you can kind of see the difference. This is like very like shallow level philosophy they teach you. You know, they teach you Hinduism in like 3 sentences basically. You know, they're on the test you have to mark Hinduist A, monotheist, B, polytheist. It's like polytheist. Or it's like Hindus were polytheists, true or false. You know, and it's like true. Yeah, that's it. Right, exactly. And so it's like that's just what they're just trying to teach you really quick. They don't really care about to analyze different things. And actually, one thing just about modern education, anything that you're being taught in the schools is in the slaughterhouse education. Anything that you're being taught in the schools, first of all, you're not being taught real knowledge. Real knowledge means knowing that you're not your body and that you shouldn't be engaged in animalistic propensities. That's real knowledge. They don't teach that in the schools. They teach that you should have sex and only care about eating, mating, and defending, and all this stuff. That's what the main thing is, defending. And to do that, you need to have all that. That's like, they don't, in the Gurukul, the proper educational system, they'll teach you proper knowledge, and the proper etiquette. You know, the people don't become people, they just become, you know, mongers. The teachers are themselves sex mongers and chain smokers and meat eaters, and like, they don't have any good habits. So there's no good habits in their students either. But beyond that, the knowledge that they're actually getting, even in college, it's very like, it's like antiquated knowledge. There's things that can be proven wrong for 20 or 30 years, but still be taught in school because the textbooks, it takes a long time for that knowledge to trickle down. For example, the many things that I remember learning about evolution in biology class in 9th grade. We know that's when you're about 14 or 15 years old. Year 9, I don't know what you guys would call it in India, something like that. But it's like we learned about it, and like there's these different examples that actually now it's gone, but they're all fraud examples. They're all like either not the right interpretation of the data, completely made up data, and like all these different, but they're like examples that you hear and you're like, wow, like that's it. That like makes so much sense. You know, it's like a picture that they give you, but it's like, and who knows if it's going to change for another 30 years. But then there's the PhDs who are like the ones who know everything in the field. They're like, yeah, it's commonly accepted amongst all of us scholars and PhDs in this field that that's obviously wrong. We know that's wrong. So it's like, that's what the people are learning. It's not even the up-to-date misinterpreted knowledge. So they're not only they're eating food from the slaughterhouse, their brains are just getting mashed in the slaughterhouse.
And like, what about the SGI Buddhists? Like, there's you know by Union Square on 16th Street, apparently there's like a SGI.
This Bali guy.
Yeah.
I like try to tell him. I try to tell him. He came and we had like a maybe 10-20 minute discussion. And he ended up chanting Hare Krishna. He wanted to do kirtan. So it was good.
Yeah, that's good.
And then he left with like, he wanted to give me his big rye bread as his like baked in some karmi factory, and I told him he should just throw it away because it's like, you don't want that consciousness. He's like, but I'm hungry. I'm like, or do whatever you want, but I don't want any part of that. And he was saying, I was trying to tell him like the Buddhist is atheistic. He's like, no, he's not atheistic. And I think maybe he didn't really understand the fullness of the Buddhist conception, because Buddhism is atheistic. They can even say there's demigods and God and things like that. But the Mayavadis also say that. They say that Vishnu is there and all these things, but that's not like the ultimate end of their philosophy. They can compress it all in, and they say the ultimate is, you can't say it is, you can't say it is not, like I was saying before. That's like, the ultimate is just shunya, nothing. You can't even describe it. So then my answer is, well, then why even try to describe it?
Yeah.
You know?
Why you have so many books describing nothing?
Yeah, it's just you're just wasting your time. You know, you want to try to end all suffering, but yeah.
So regarding your question, so the story of this prince is Siddhartha Gautama, and he was born in Lumbini. In Nepal, he was the son of a prince. So he did see all that. And he goes and meditates under the same tree which
it's near
Vishnu Buddha meditated under.
It was actually the place where he was buried or something like that. That's what I recently just read. It was like the previous avatar. It was like near like a shrine made of where he was buried.
There's a tree under which, if you go to Bodh Gaya,
yeah.
there's a tree. So that tree was where Vishnu Buddha also meditated. And so all these, there's even books about Buddha's previous lives and all.
What?
So they all refer to Siddhartha Gautama. His previous lives, in the previous life he was something. So there's all books and stories about how Buddha lived in his past lives. And there are two main branches of Buddhism. I don't know which.
Mahayana and
Theravada. So both have kind of gone really watered down. Mahayana believes in the concept of bodhisattva as enlightened
monks coming back.
Buddhas being born for the sake of welfare. So I went to a Mahayana monastery in Hong Kong, and so they have one Buddha. They have each Buddha which is praying for different purposes. One Buddha is praying for disease to be eradicated. Another Buddha is praying for wealth. So these. I was seeing these Chinese Buddhists. They were going around, and just like we pray to different demigods, they were praying to different Buddhas. And but the idea is that the ultimate Buddha, he renounces everything. But if you want not the ultimate thing, if you want the other things, then you go to the other Buddhas, and they make all sorts of prayers, and they have all these mantras, and they have
wheels. You just spin it.
You just spin those wheels. Huh?
That's like if you put it the Maha Mantra on your beads and just like.
Yeah.
We went through the whole
On
mala,
the way.
I think a minute.
So the Theravada is more interesting because Theravada is actually more connected to Vedic thought than Mahayana. Oh, and by the way, it is Gautama Buddha's sons and daughter, I think he also has a daughter, who spread Buddhism. Vishnu Buddha just stayed in India, that's all, he never went anywhere. But his children, one of them went down to Sri Lanka, another went east, went to the Far East and spread Buddhism. And it was Gautama Buddha, the teachings of Gautama Buddha, and his son, I think, his son or something, who influenced Ashoka.
Right.
To be the
Then
other.
Ashoka was a big.
And then that's how India turned into Buddhist.
And then before that, after that, Shankara came.
Shankara came after that. So, Theravada is interesting because they have all the demigods we worship, including
Yeah, they
Vishnu.
have Vishnu.
They have,
Yeah.
this was in Sri Lanka. It's completely different. Theravada is more on the renunciation thing. Their idea is that they have only Buddha. There's only one Buddha, and that one Buddha symbolizes true renunciation, nirvana, and freedom from all material desires. But what do we conditioned souls who have material problems do? You can't approach Buddha because Buddha doesn't fulfill anything, So you can't approach Buddha. So they approach the demigods. They have Shiva, they have Vishnu, they have Parvati, they have Subramanya.
Sai-Baba?
No, they don't.
Oh, yeah.
They have Ganesh.
Step up from the Mayavadis.
And so in the demigods there are gradations, and their idea is that these demigods are on their way to become to attain nirvana.
Oh my God.
So they said something like
So hard.
Subramanya will attain nirvana in 3 lives,
Oh my God.
and Vishnu will attain nirvana in 5 lives.
Whoa.
And
Yeah.
so it's interesting how they
That's
so they have
fun.
all these Vishnu, they have all the temples. So they have Vishnu temples, and in Vishnu you see a Buddhist monk inside,
Thank God.
doing some sort of puja, and then there will be Shiva. And it's kind of, anyways, it's influenced
so
heavily by
weird.
Shaiva.
Are they vegetarian?
What, the Buddhists there? No.
No, of course not.
They're not vegetarian. So just see, what's the use of all that? It's like,
they say that you should not endeavor to go and kill an animal, but if someone gives it to you, we can refuse it.
Nah, that's the excuse I always.
yeah, that's just like that's just Kali Yuga and philosophy getting watered down, I think.
Yeah.
They even it's like you can't even say that they have a philosophy. They're just like in Kali Yuga, they just suck. Everyone is just stupid, and like whatever philosophy they think of some reason why they don't have to follow it. And one thing you were saying about the Buddha's previous life, this is a good argument against Mayavad. Mayavads, you wanted to merge. That's the goal. So who should be able to attain the goal? The Acharya, right? Isn't it? If that's what they're preaching, Prabhupada says the goal is to attain Krishna Prema. So Prabhupada should show Krishna Prema, isn't it? Like, that's natural, and of course he does. And so, but we'll know that for Shankaracharya's gurus, there's Gaudapad and Govindapad, and there's actually proof that they never actually attained liberation from their subtle material bodies. There's some incident where, if we read about the history of Shankaracharya, after his grand guru left, he appeared in Shankaracharya's trance when he was absorbed in meditation. And he said, "Oh, Shankar, I've heard your praises from your Gurudev, Govindapad. I've also heard that you composed a beautiful commentary on my Mundakya Karika. I want to see it." And then he showed him, and then he felt very happy to see it and gave his approval and left. So from that incident, he didn't attain that nirvana mukti. So if they had actually attained nirvana mukti, those incidents wouldn't have taken place. But if we accept them as real and bona fide, then the nirvishesh mukti or the nirvana mukti of the Mayavadis is false.
That's crazy.
So,
Anyways, I have one more part. Well, it's more details about Buddhism. So Theravada has 3 aspects, which is something like their philosophy. So they have Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam
Wow, they
Gacchami.
have a name for that?
So this is their chant. we went and did kirtan in a Buddhist program in Sri Lanka. And so it was like, it was like a revolutionary preaching because it's so hard to preach to the Buddhists in Sinhalese. So we did a Hare Krishna kirtan and then they had this kirtan, the Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, there's this chant. So the idea is that Buddham means, it talks about, it's a state of nirvana that they're talking Buddham. And Dhammam refers to, Dhammam is the impersonal thing. And it's written over there, it's neither good, it's neither bad. You can't actually describe it. It is, but it is not.
Yeah, like that.
And it's something like that.
You Prabhupada disciple saying.
And then Sangam Sharanam means you have to seek the association of the enlightened people to understand Dhammam and Buddha. So, yeah, the philosophy in Sri Lanka it was so apparent. They couldn't pray to Buddha because there's nothing to pray. Buddha is all renounced. He's gone.
He's not even there.
Yeah, it's like nirvana. So what do you pray to him for? But I have problems. So what do? I go to the demigods, and it's like the same thing you see in Mahayana, but in a different way. You don't have the demigods there, so it's the philosophy itself is.
Yeah.
When we were the Sinhalese in Sri Lanka used to get confused because we used to take the mridanga, kartal, and sing and dance, and their Buddhist monks, always look depressed and really silent. So they couldn't exactly figure out what are these guys. Are they Buddhists or they're not Buddhist because they have not seen anything else. They don't know anything.
I mean, in America, still, everyone, you're a Buddhist. Like that's probably how many times do you hear that per day?
Yeah, I love Buddhism. Man. I know all about Buddhism.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Buddhism.
But it was interesting how the culture.
I think that would be a nice.
People here, they don't. It's very here. It's so convoluted. The idea of Buddhism. I'm talking about where it's actually the state religion.
Yeah.
But Buddhism is the state.
We might as well be Buddhist for how much people really understand the philosophy, anyways.
There's so much support. I mean, in one sense, these countries preserve their culture and religion better than Vedic. In Sri Lanka, Buddhist monks they get paid by the government. Everything is free for them. They can walk into the parliament. They can walk into the prime minister's office. You can walk anywhere unquestioned. You're like the Brahmana, the caste. You really
wonderful.
You enter a bus. If you don't have a seat, someone will get up and make you sit. They will not let you stand. And it's like a lot.
Did they do that to you?
Yeah, because
they thought.
They think, you're in saffron. Whatever is saffron, That's it.
Wow.
All right, I don't know where I'm gonna move.
You know where to go.
I see the people in Sri Lanka, they're so biased, they never get money.
Yeah.
Sasha
has a question.
Just point. I mean, we talked how Buddhists actually are not vegetarians and do not follow that. But I remember some Christian sects, some kind of Adventists.
Seventh-day Adventists.
Yes,
they're vegetarians.
They are vegetarians and they do not drink alcohol.
Good. They're better than the Buddhists that eat meat then.
Yeah.
But they're just on the path of theism. They haven't reached the conclusion that they're further on the path, but
not there yet.
Yeah, not there yet. That's why Mahotsa needs to go there and give them all a Bhagavatam set. Seventh-day Adventists, no, you got to tell them, 51st, day of Brahma, a year of Brahma, like Adventist of Lord Chaitanya.
Mormons don't drink or eat.
Yeah, neither do Muslims.
They eat meat.
Muslims eat meat, but they don't drink alcohol or take intoxication.
They don't eat any meat other than cow meat. So. Alright.
Has the offering gone up and come down?
Up and down.
Up and down, in and out.
Gruntaraj, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Mahotsa Das Brahmachari ki jai. Vaishnavebhyo